Welcome to Channel Edge, the podcast where channel leaders share success strategies, best practices, and emerging trends. Brought to you by 360 Insights, the channel success platform.
And hello. This is
Reggie.
Channel Edge podcast. I know we typically would see Stephen Kellum pretty much managing this whole entire conversation from start to finish. But we're doing something a little bit differently today. So I'm going to introduce myself and then I'm going to introduce our guest today. So for those that do not know me, and many of you probably don't, my name is Reggie Waterman and I'm the Director of Marketing at 360 Insights. I report into Stephen Kellum. So we manage all of the content that you see in relation to everything channel. So I'm here because we want to do, we want to switch it up. We want to offer up some variety. And I am super excited to have a conversation with Robert Cassard, our video guru, best-selling author of the book called Video Growth Hacking for Channel Chiefs. Welcome, Robert. How you doing?
Thank you, Reggie. I'm doing great. I'm always glad to be on a 360 Insights podcast. It's always fun.
Oh, it's riveting. It's always riveting. I know. I knew you just couldn't wait. This is probably the first thing you're like so anxious, excited, all the above. Just couldn't wait to get on this podcast. So appreciate
we'll do our best to rivet a few. We'll rivet some. Yep. We can do it.
We can do it. We got it. All right. So, you know what? Let's just jump right into this. Why don't you, for our audience, explain and just tell us about who Robert Cassard is and why is he? I'm referring to you. I'm referring to you as the video guru. I don't know if that's anybody has labeled you as that, but from the years of experience that you have, I gotta say that you probably are a guru of some sense. So take us back into your background. Tell the audience about who you are.
Sure. I've been in the advertising world for literally decades, in one form or another, advertising and marketing. And the whole video thing came about because after being a copywriter, a broadcast producer, an account executive, a marketing strategist, blah, 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 all these different roles that I'd played in my career, what I kept noticing over and over and over again was that whenever I would be involved in a campaign that would have all kinds of different facets and it might have print components, it might have, back in the day, radio, television, whatever, I always noticed that video was the thing that kept producing the best results. It was communicating the most clearly, it was getting people the most excited, and ultimately was the factor that sort of could make or break any type of campaign. So that's what drove me into video. And I've had a very circuitous path in terms of how I, became sort of the video guy. And this notion of the video growth hacker, that's sort of a nickname that came to me from really being focused totally on growth. It's sort of like you can use video in 1,000 different ways, but my focus is growth, and it always has been. So I think that kind of made me unique. And, if people were used to, people at companies, they would call a videographer, and, the videographers are always focused on what's the creative and how wacky can this be to grab attention, and can we go viral and all this kind of stuff. I tend to be much more pragmatic than that. I'm a guy who just is focused in on how are we going to make this video communicate what it needs to this audience, get them to do what we want them to do. So there's a pragmatism to what I do that I think makes me a little different than many. And it's ended up that I've had this very, I'd say, fortunate career in that I've worked for a lot of very big companies and a ton of little guys where I get to move the needle even more. So that's a long way of saying I've earned it.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that, right? And one thing that, I took away from that introduction is that pragmatic approach, right? When it comes to video, if you think about it, we all have a concept of what the output would look like at the end of the day, right?
Yes. Yep.
But in terms of what that actually translates into, once you actually do have a finished product, this is where someone like you comes into play to kind of, format it, create the structure in a manner that's impactful and intentional at the same time, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you said it. So it's funny because there are still a lot of companies who are not using video in their marketing. And that's somewhat shocking to me. I feel like at this point, you've got to do video in some form. You've got to do it. And I've tried to understand what it is that holds certain companies back, despite best intentions. Like I've had companies that call me, we have strategy meetings, we go through exactly how they're going to be using video for some period of time. I lay a proposal on their desk and then silence while they theoretically are mulling it over internally and discussing whatever they have to discuss. And then a year later, I'll go back and look and say, they still don't have a video on their website to greet people. They don't, they just don't have a video program. That's kind of stunning to me. And so one of the things I've been trying to understand, because I feel like it's the barrier to entry in terms of why will people work with me and one of my companies or not? What are the things that prevent these companies from doing video? And I've come up with 3. There may be a 4th, but the most obvious are time. They think they're going to have to invest too much time and energy. Cost, of course, if they don't think they have the adequate budget. And then there's something that I think is more nebulous, which is perceived risk, right? They may be afraid of, for some people, it's like, I'm afraid of appearing on camera, and they're very self-conscious about that. So that's understandable. But there's also this perceived risk of we're going to be sticking our brand out there. And what if we do something that embarrasses us or something that just doesn't work or whatever. And so some combination of those things seem to be the reasons that there are still some stragglers out there not doing video, not even trying it.
Geez, okay, I'm glad you mentioned that. So the 3 barriers are pretty much time, money, and perception, right? Because there's an overall risk, as you mentioned, in terms of, okay, well, how am I going to be perceived on camera? And it's funny how you mentioned that this day and age where, everyone, especially now more than ever because of the pandemic and whatnot, I've always said you have to be a content factor because you have to garnish up so much attention because there's a lot of noise out there. And one thing to kind of break the monotony is video. And especially when you want to bring your brand to life, right? So if you look at those 3 barriers, how do you usually go about, helping your partners or just your clients overcome those 3 barriers?
Sure. So, in terms of time, one of the things that I like to be really clear about is that the time that they envision it's going to take to create or produce one or more videos, I think they've mythologized it, right? They think, oh, this is going to take me and my creative team all of this time. We got to make sure we adhere to brand standards. There's just 1,000 things they're worried about in that process. And when you bring in someone who is an experienced video producer and preferably someone who knows video strategy, they understand sort of how the videos are going to be used in the context of a larger marketing plan. You bring that person in and they're going to cut to the chase on all this stuff, right? Especially if you bring someone in who's expert in your vertical, in your sector. If they know technology, you're not going to have to tell them a whole lot, right? There's this mythology of, I'm going to have to teach them everything about the technology of my product. The technologies just aren't that different. Bad news. Sorry, guys, your technology isn't that different than the next guy's, right? So anybody who's been creating technology videos for a long time knows 95% of what they need to know. Everything else is incremental. So you come in, you give me that incremental knowledge, and then I'm going to be able to say, guess what? You don't have to be involved in these 90 things that are on the checklist for video production, right? There's literally, 90 that you don't have to be involved in. I want you here and here and here. These are the places where your input is critical to me to make sure I understand the differentiators, for example, or to make sure that we do consult brand standards if they exist for your particular, vendor company. We use those all the time, right? You don't have to tell us everything. We just look at the brand standards and we make sure the video adheres to those. There's a lot of stuff that we just sort of do. And so the notion of taking a lot of time, forget it. More importantly, the other side of that is think of all the time that you're currently wasting as a vendor and all those channel partners out there. The time they are wasting trying trying to explain these technologies when they don't have a video that encapsulates that information and communicates it clearly, effectively, and in a way that's going to just enlighten people. I think of what I do as education. More than sales, it's education. And by educating, guess what? You make sales.
Yeah, like exactly.
Yeah.
No, and thank you for breaking that down, Robert, because the key differentiators, as you mentioned, like those incremental nuggets of knowledge and insights that I would need to understand as a prospect client.
Yep.
Right. So that's one. And then simplifying the message, that's another component to it as well. But in terms of also creating better engagement, and I feel that that's where a lot of brands fall short, right?
Yes.
And even what I've seen as in trends, and we're obviously going to talk about the variety of different trends that you're seeing as well. Sure. But one that I've actually been seeing a lot too is once, either you could be a salesperson and you want to engage with a prospect. I've seen it on LinkedIn where instead of your traditional DM or email message, it's here's a video message. And if I'm if I'm the receiver of that message, let's just say I had or received an email from salesperson A that was just text, salesperson B, which is video, I'm probably more inclined to open up salesperson B's email because it's just that personalization, that extra step that allows me to say it builds that sense of intrigue. So can we kind of talk about that as a particular trend, and then go down the path of what other trends are you seeing within video?
Sure. So that what you're talking about is a really important aspect of a comprehensive look at video marketing. I think one of the problems that companies have is when they first approach video and they say, what are we going to do? The first thing they always want to do. I mean, literally, I don't know if I've ever had a company come to me and not do this. They want to sell more, right? So they come and they say, I need a sales video.
That's strange.
Right? Yeah, I need a sales oriented video, right? So that's what we're always being asked to do. What I find interesting, and of course, we capitulate. We'll make you a great sales video, of course. But what I like to do is always ask a client to step back for a minute and think about the totality of their customer life cycle. Because the kind of thing you're talking about, a LinkedIn connection where a video greets you and you click on and go, oh my gosh, this guy actually made a video to introduce himself. That's cool, right? You had that reaction. That level of personalization is really important. But beyond that one little component, it's just one of the full circle of the contact that you are going to have with that company and perhaps with that person too. So from a company standpoint, we're looking and saying, hey, before you make a sale, there are some things that have to happen. First of all, the person has to find you as a company. They have to know you exist. And then they've got to sort of understand what you do or how you can help them. And then they need to start feeling some trust that, it seems like this company is actually, they got their act together and, I can trust them and they'll probably deliver for me. They're probably going to do some research and, check your ratings and this and that. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to go through a self-education process. And if you don't have video content out there for that process, that's a loss, right? I mean, how many times, have you been looking at a product, let's say on Amazon, if there's a little video there, chances are you click it and go, I want to understand a little more how the company sees their own product. That's a
exactly
thing. Then once you buy the product, what do you do? How do you reach out to that person who made that purchase, who put their trust and faith in your company and made the purchase? Well, I say, thank them. Send them a thank you of some form, right? And it better be video. In this day and age, it should have a video component. Here's a funny thing. I say that to clients, especially new ones, and they'll go, oh my gosh, I never thought about thanking somebody in a video, and you go, I mean, that's just common courtesy, right? But they don't think, hey, we could use video to do that. And it would be a canned message, but it won't feel canned. It'll feel like it's personal, right? So you've got that, and I could keep going with this whole life cycle, but to try to do it briefly, after the sale, you're making somebody really feel good about the purchase they made. You're moving them through that process. There's a series of touch points that you're going to want to hit them with. And then at a certain point, you're going to gauge through a survey, how satisfied is this person? Are they loving my company? How are they feeling? If they are loving you, you're going to then leverage that person probably through a video to get referrals and new business. So you get this whole life cycle. And if you get the whole video package working through that whole cycle, it's amazing what you can do. And it's basically automated. So, pretty cool. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. And we will touch upon some of the touch points because you mentioned it. And I want to go a little bit deeper, especially for our audience that are, they're tuning in. I think it's offers up tremendous value if we can touch on those, on the touch points, because if you think about it, if I'm, let's say, hesitant to leverage video, but if I know the impact that it could have throughout the buyer's journey, that leads to greater conversion, I want to listen. And this is why we have you here. So would you mind talking about each particular touch point and like what kind of, what can we do from a video standpoint that would be so, I would say, incrementally impactful versus traditional means of email, of here, let's just send them a case study. Let's send them an ebook, right?
Right. So I think one of the most important things that a company can think about when they're evaluating this whole life cycle. So here's one thing that I should mention. I should break this out because the buyer's journey to me is a little different than the customer life cycle, right? The buyer's journey is sort of that process of how do you go from awareness, educate yourself, and then make a purchase, right? Okay, that's it. It's the funnel, we call it, right? Top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. Now they made a purchase. And so a lot of companies go, we're done. Yay. And from my perspective, no, you're just getting started. And that's where those continued, the post-sale touch points come in. I'll give you an example. There were, I did a campaign many moons ago for Ultimate Ears, the company that makes the in-ear monitors for rock stars. And you've seen them, right? They're a division of Logitech. And originally they came to us for a sales video, big surprise. Well, while we were talking to their people, they said, we're having this serious problem that's just come up recently. Suddenly we're getting more product returns. And these are custom built in-ear monitors, right? So this is not just like, oh, it was a $10 device and it got returned. We are talking about sometimes it would cost the company $600 if they got a product returned. Okay, that's a lot out the door, right? And these returns were spiking, and they couldn't figure out, what had changed or why it was happening. And from our perspective, we started to say, well, how are you reaching out to the customer who purchases this product? And they said, oh, we've got this beautiful instruction manual. And, it was beautiful. We're talking premium printing, gorgeous, like UV coated this and that. Just amazing, right? But guess what? Nobody was reading them. Nobody was opening the instruction. It looked great, right? But nobody actually opened it. And one of the tricks to Ultimate Ears is that you have to kind of put them in your ear and then you twist forward. If you try to push it straight in, literally you'll make your ears bleed, right? Yes. So they were getting returns of people with bloody ears, I'm sure, saying this product doesn't work or it doesn't fit me, right?
Yeah.
And we were like, no, it's not that it doesn't fit. It's that you didn't read the instruction manual. Okay, so we worked with them to create this automated post-sale series of emails. And we thought, well, while we're at it, we shouldn't just address that issue of the instruction manual. We should also figure out, because they had some buyer's remorse issues. Some people would place the order and go, whoa, I just spent $1,200 on a pair of headphones. And then they would retract the order. So they were having that problem too. So we said, okay, right when someone places an order, let's tie into your Oracle database and let's make sure a video reaches out to thank that person for the purchase, tell them how excited they should be because this product is the best, right? And here's why. Show the artists who wear these things on stage, get them excited about the fact that they're going to be part of that audiophile group, that has the best of the best, right? So that's how we start. Then when the product is going to be shipping, like literally the Oracle database again knows that product's about to go out, another video comes out. That one basically says, hey, we got great news. Your in-ear monitors are on the way, and you get them all prepped. By the way, when you get them, it's a little different than a typical headphone. You need to know how to use these. So here's how you do it. And we have this woman who literally says, you twist them in, Then 21 days after you've received your in-ears, now there's another touch point. And that one is hope you're loving them, and you see again, more stars that use these things. You make them all pumped up. Say, what we really need from you now is to know how you're feeling about it. Please click this button and take our survey. And this was a basic net promoter survey, right? How likely are you to pass this along to someone else and recommend it? Well, net promoter score at Logitech is a huge deal. In fact, it's like the way they measure customer satisfaction. So a bunch of things happened. Here's this lowly little video campaign, right? 3 touch points. You'd think, it couldn't make that much of a difference. The number of people who were canceling orders almost dropped to nothing. I mean, it literally dropped by like 88%. It's in my book, by the way. This whole case study is in my book.
It's beautiful.
The second touch point, which to me is the most important one, was we really created a video instruction manual disguised as a shipping announcement. Your product's shipping, right? But it was really an instruction manual to say, when you get those things, they're different, they're better. Here's why, here's how you use it. That nudge is what people needed. Their returns just plummeted as well. The net promoter score went from a little over 40 to near 80. And it happened almost instantly. They ended up being like in the top 5, the best companies in the world end up with an NPS of 80. And these guys just shot up there. They were the best Logitech division for multiple years running, partly based on this little, campaign that could. So to me, that's the most graphic in my whole career. That's probably the most graphic example of a campaign that just went way beyond what we even expected it would do. It just did the job. And because it was triggered at those specific points in the customer life cycle, it just worked like a charm. So anyway, zip it, Robert. You're going.
I love that example. I'm glad that we went down this path, Robert, because it kind of dispels a lot of you talked about the 3 things earlier, right? Which is time, money, perception, / risk, right?
Yep.
And even I would add a 4th when it comes to the risk factor, it's the overthinking of things, right? We tend to overthink and not realize that these things that we're overthinking have drastic impacts, right? On our customers. And I'm glad that you've kind of segmented it in one way. You looked at it from top of funnel all the way to middle, then, the bottom. And then you go transition over to the customer lifecycle because you said, hey, it doesn't stop after we manage the funnel, right? You still have this customer relationship that you have to nurture. And the best way to create an instrumental and memorable customer experience could be through these various touch points. And I'm glad that you brought up the ultimate ears example, because now it's like, well, we've now invested in video to create those touch points, but also amplified and magnified in a way that brings tremendous value. As you said, okay, well, these ultimate ears saw a huge reduction, in terms of returns. Mm-hmm. The net promoter score shot right up, right? Mm-hmm. So it's these little things, these nuggets that have huge impacts on not only our bottom line, because it's going to drive, the likelihood to recommend, because now we have customer satisfaction levels increasing, going through the roof. Yep. If you think about it in various industries, if it's not returned, it's what? It's a reduction in calls, right? Yes.
Yep, exactly.
So there's an decrease in OpEx, right?
Yep.
So if we scale out video and go back to the original thought of, wow, we noticed that a lot of, companies and brands are not utilizing video. If this is not a business case for it, I don't know what is.
That's what I'm saying. I think from my perspective, I think if there's a sin that most companies commit when they begin to move into the video realm, is that they focused totally on sales, and they tend to think everything has to be in the first video they make. Instead of saying, whatever we do, it's just step 1. We're going to make a lot of videos over the course of doing business. let's not try to put everything and the kitchen sink in the first one. We see a lot of companies try to do that, especially if it's going to be a video that resides on their website. This is going to be our homepage video. It's our flagship. It's got to tell everything about us. You're looking at them. We're always telling them, here's what's so funny. Yep, it's your flagship video. It's not even about you. It's about the customer and the problems they have. And oh, by the way, you solve those problems. It's really, branding is the thing that comes last in all of this stuff, right? And that is so counterintuitive to the average marketing person. I mean, I was an advertising guy for years. I was pushing brands all day long and logo placement and this and that. Yeah, got to have awareness. Brand needs to be out there. But when it comes to this communications process, I would almost say the less branding, the better. That you just, it's subtle. It's a little thing down in the lower right-hand corner. You don't have to scream brand all the time, because that just turns people off, especially millennials and people who are skeptical now, because the internet has created a much bigger, much greater degree of skepticism generally. People don't tend to trust things that are too slick. So you can make it professional, but don't go slick.
And I like how you mentioned there, because everybody right now, as you mentioned, is somewhat seeking the truth, right?
That's it.
Because there's so much. We talked about it. There's so much noise out there. So it's like, okay, well, who's credible enough that I want to actually buy from them, right?
Yeah, people smell it if you're hyping. They just, you can't avoid it now. It's like everybody's gotten sophisticated. We all have, very well-honed BS detectors. And I think it only gets more so every year. I feel like you got to be more and more authentic. Now that's good from a cost standpoint. We were talking about cost earlier as a potential barrier. A lot of the videos that a company produces don't need to be full-blown productions where you hire a videographer and do this and that. A lot of what we do, in fact, we did this for 360 Insights. We create branding packages, with little interstitial stuff and, like a little 5-second open where a logo animates and, a choice of the music that's going to be common to your videos, these elements that sort of professionalize and do brand content, but they're just little incidentals that make people go, oh, that's a legit company. But then the content itself can be pretty casual and informal a lot of the time. So you have the branding and those elements, those video elements unite all of the content, but they do it in a way that doesn't just push too hard so that the viewer goes, oh, they're being too pushy or slick or whatever.
Love that piece. That key word there in that talk track, among all the other value that you do and the nuggets that you're dropping in this podcast. So audience, please I hope you're all taking notes on this, because thing is, the beauty of being with 360, I get to replay this over and over and over again. So all the value that Robert's bringing, I get to do that. And you'll be able to do that too once this recording comes out. But that keyword, informal, if we are able to put out ourselves, right? Because, I'm a brand, you're a brand, but I work for 360, which is the overarching brand that I work for.
Yep.
But if we could deliver our package, our video, in a somewhat informal way, I feel that that's what creates a better connection, because now you're adding that human element to it. So it's not so salesy. It's not so, formalized to a point where, okay, it's another B2B video and I gotta buy from these guys because these guys are selling software. No, there's people behind the brand. There's people that make the brand.
Yes, human.
Yes.
It's the human element. Yeah, I think, they talk about it like in architecture, the human scale in architecture. If you walk into a house and the ceilings are really, really high and the rooms are super, super big, you actually feel small. Right? It makes you feel small. That's not a natural way you want to feel in a home environment. So, bring down the scale. Yeah, it can still have a little bit of grandeur to it. You could have an 8-foot ceiling and that's probably not a problem, but you go too high, it's too much. And I think it's the same thing with the over professionalism of a lot of video content. If you spend too much time perfecting everything. It just sort of smacks of kind of why they have to try so hard. You know what I mean?
They got to
have to try that hard. I'm just a person. Just talk to me.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that's a big part of it. For that reason, when writing scripts, I tend to be very careful. I always read, and I would recommend this to anybody, by the way, if you're even thinking of writing a script for a video, whether it's something you're going to be saying yourself or something that you're doing for your company, you absolutely have to read it out loud and keep rewriting it until it's truly what you would say. If it does not sound like what you would say, that's not a script for these modern times. It needs to sound like a real person talking, not some corporate, entity.
Yeah.
Big deal. And it's a super easy tip that anybody can use. I see folks, especially salespeople, who kind of get nervous the first few times they go on camera creating their own videos, and they just try too hard. I can tell they wrote a script, they're trying to remember it, or they're trying to read it from something that's up on their screen,
the teleprompter or whatever,
the teleprompter kind of thing. And they're just, it's like almost painful to see somebody try so hard. It's like, no, just talk to me. Hey, it's Reggie.
They try so hard where you don't even see them blinking, right? So it's like, okay, let's.
It's bad.
But that's not.
And we kind of cringe with them. There can be a sympathy factor, that could be engaged. Like, oh gosh, I kind of feel sorry for this guy, but that's not where we want him to go, right? We want to go in that place of, I like this guy and I feel like I can trust him. That's the sweet spot for that kind of personal video.
Awesome. Cool. So let that land for everybody here. Let your voice, use your natural voice, right? When you're scripting, read it, write it over and over again so that it sounds authentic. It sounds like you. Now I want to switch gears to your book.
Sure.
So this is an interesting title, Video Growth Hacking for Channel Chiefs.
Yes.
Why channel chiefs?
That's a good one.
It's very niche. Very niche.
It's niche. I think that was my intention. I always thought, I'll probably write a book just called Video Growth Hacking, that would be sort of for any business person. And who knows, maybe I still will. But I think initially it was the first book I ever wrote. And so, my first foray into being an author like that, I thought, I'm going to write it for this niche that I know. I've been steeped in channel marketing for about 13 years now, and I've worked for so many technology vendors, distributors, tons of resellers, consultants, you name it. I'm at that point, or was at that point. This book was actually written 5 years ago, and it was kind of funny because at the time, I thought, okay, has anybody else written something about this topic? There's got to be stuff out there, right? I couldn't find anything. So I thought, well, that's good. At least I'll be the only guy who's writing for the channel audience and writing about video. But it was funny. It's been a while since I read the book. So last night I knew we were going to have this interview today. And I thought, I'm actually going to go back and read that thing. What did I say 5 years ago? It's like a time capsule, right? Here's what I was almost shocked because it's a quick read. It's like 130 pages. I read it in an hour. And I think almost anybody can. What shocked me was nothing has changed. Like all the problems that the channel managers and anybody in the channel is facing, same problems, same expectations from the C-level about double-digit growth. If you look at the way they're currently using marketing platforms and the whole through channel marketing automation and all that stuff, there really haven't been any major developments in the last 5 years. I mean, you guys in incentives, there's been evolution, but in marketing automation, not a lot of evolution, at least not that I'm seeing. I was shocked that pretty much everything in the book stands. I could write the same thing today without even flinching and would say, that's it. That's still what I have to say because the lessons haven't been learned yet. Some companies have learned some of the lessons. Companies have gotten better with the sales videos. They're getting a little better in downplaying their branding. Some of these bits of advice that are throughout the book, things we're talking about today, I see it. So it is happening, but then there's the other side of it. I can't tell you the last time I saw someone thank me in a video for doing business with them. I still don't know if I've ever received a video thanking me. Really? How's that possible? And I could go on with all those touch points in the life cycle. I can't remember the last time a company sent me a video asking me for a referral based on the fact that I'm a satisfied customer. Boy, there's a lot of missed opportunity there, right? I mean,
Yes.
ask. You got to do the ask, and might as well have a video do it, so it doesn't take any staff time. It doesn't take any time of anybody. It's just like, boom, there it goes, and it generates new business. We love that. That's how I love to see video, by the way. It's always looking at it and saying, what can it do for us? How can it leverage our time and our money in a way that is going to produce results that we don't even have? It's like set it and forget it. We don't have to think about it. It just keeps going. So we're trying to build assets. I look at videos as strategic assets for any company. And we're trying to create a set of assets that are just going to keep working for you, no matter what else is going on in the world. And yes, you might have to make some changes at some point, but a lot of this stuff that I've done, typical shelf life, 5 years. I mean, a lot of this stuff works for a long time. And mostly the cost of doing it can be amortized over the first few months. I would say very rarely have I seen a company still, that has invested in video still thinking, oh, we haven't paid for itself. No, it paid for itself, months or years ago, and it's all gravy from here on out. So there you go.
I'm loving this conversation. The reason why is because you have dispelled those barriers that we talked about.
Right on.
And so the thing is, it's funny. Your book, as you mentioned, you just read it last night, and the same rules, principles still apply to this day. So good for you, right?
Yeah.
Shame on the companies that are not leveraging it, right?
Maybe that's the sadder side of it. From my standpoint, that's the sad part. Yep. In other words, people didn't all read the book. Darn.
No, but there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity for it to continue to promote the book, right? Sure. And to demonstrate the value. Because I like the way that you put it. Video can be leveraged as an asset. There's equity behind that investment, right?
Good word. Yep.
Right. So as you are able to maintain that equity and leverage that video, it becomes evergreen in the sense that, hey, I'm going to continue leveraging this through the cycles. Because remember, the cycle doesn't end.
That's right.
Come on.
Yes.
That's the definition of a cycle.
You got it.
So continuously be able to use it, leverage it, utilize it, and it will pay dividends for you. And I think the precursor to not only dispel that barrier, man, I'm already sold on it. So if we were to say, and we could before we drop the curtain on this conversation, what would be the 3 whys? Why do I, as someone that hasn't decided, to overcome these fears and the barriers of entry to video, why do I need to do video? If we want to wrap this up and summarize it.
Well, there's 1,000 statistics that I could point to that would absolutely say you must do video. I'll give you one example. This is probably my favorite because it's the one I use when I first encounter a company and they don't have any video on their website, or they don't have at least a video on their homepage. Forrester Research did a study a while back, and they found that a company is 53 times more likely to appear on page 1 of a Google search if they have a video on their homepage. So a 53x multiplier just for putting a video on your homepage. Now there's some little caveats in there, like the video should be on your YouTube channel and, playing through from YouTube because Google and YouTube are in bed together and blah, blah, blah. But, aside from those little details, that statistic alone basically says to me, having a video on my homepage is more important than any other single choice or expenditure I can make regarding my search engine optimizing, right? Video is the number one thing I can do. And I can get that video up there and immediately start watching my site climb in the rankings, move up toward page 1. It may not get there just on the basis of a video, but It might. So why not do it, right? So that, you asked for 3. I don't know if I exactly have 3 easy whys, but that's one of them. That's
a big one.
Just look at the stats, and that will give you a whole raft of whys. Another why is, if you're not doing video, I guarantee you have a competitor that is, and they are outstripping you right now. It's like you need to put the foot in there and start doing it. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's the thing. Don't bet the bank on the first video you ever do. Understand this is a commitment. You're walking into a new territory. You're going to do business in a different way. And in the process, you're actually going to save time and you're going to decrease costs. Yes, at the front, it looks like it's going to take time and we have to pay for these videos, right? That seems like, we got to get over that hurdle. But once you're over it, the exact opposite happens. The videos are making you money and they're saving you time. You stop repeating yourself. That alone is worth its weight in gold. I mean, what's it worth to not have to tell your story for the 50th
over and over and over again, right? Yeah. Just push play.
Push play. That's it. Yep. So there you go. That's at least 3 reasons right there.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Robert, now, last couple of questions.
Sure.
Important too.
Yeah.
How could people find you? Or how could they reach you?
I think the easiest way to reach me, go to videogrowthhacker.com. That's my sort of personal site. It's where I put a lot of the videos that I write and direct. And it's just an easy place to get a hold of me. So that's probably the easiest.
Okay, cool. And then where can they buy this fabulous book?
This fabulous book. Well, it's up on Amazon. That's where I published it originally. And it's available as a Kindle type, if you want to just have it on your iPad, or you can purchase an actual paperback if you really want to hold it in your hands. There's nothing like holding it in your hands to me, but it's up there. And, I really do appreciate anybody who invests in it. I think that's amazing and I appreciate it. But listen, if someone really, doesn't have the money, like, I just can't spend it right now, or I really want the information, just contact me. I will get you an ebook, one form or another, a PDF, something so that you can read it. I want the information out there way more than I want the income from a book. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. This was a brilliant conversation, folks. Robert, as I mentioned, dropped some serious nuggets of value for you today. Please listen, put this on repeat if you have to. And we're looking forward to having more of you that are tuning in, do a lot more video, because as Robert mentioned, you can bring your brand to life. You'll be impacting your customer and building relationships and building that connection with them in a different manner. And think about your competition. And Robert mentioned this, they might be doing it. So you need to level up as well. Robert, appreciate you. This is an awesome conversation. And listen, we're going to be doing a series of videos. We got to 360.
Hey, I was going to say, Reggie, one thing we never talked about, so let's schedule another one, is we need to talk trends, because I think there are some really important trends that people are going to want to know about and that will kind of help them cut to the chase. So, hey, if you're up for it, I'm up for it. Anytime.
Let's keep it going. Listen, I'm up for it too, because they have to know what these trends are.
Yep. All right, man. Amazing. Pleasure meeting you today. Really fun.
Likewise. I had a blast. All right. Thank you, Channel Edge folks.
Thanks for listening to Channel Edge, brought to you by 360 Insights, the channel success platform. Subscribe now on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play, and you'll always be the first to access new episodes where channel leaders share success strategies, best practices, and emerging trends. For bookings, feedback, questions, or comments, feel free to email us at channeledge@360insights.com.